Russia's economy may crumble any time from now. It's no secret that oil export is Russia's main source of revenue. Even with a rapid inflation and interest rates hitting a decade high of 21%, it's the oil money that's keeping the country afloat. But now, Donald Trump has a plan in the works to completely destroy this major source of income.
Leave the oil to me. We have more liquid gold, oil and gas. We have more liquid gold than any country in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. We have more than Russia.
So how exactly does Trump plan to take down Russia's oil and gas industry? And how will this affect the global oil market? To weaken Russia's oil-dependent economy, Trump has proposed an aggressive approach to increase U.S. oil and gas production. His strategy focuses on lifting restrictions on federal land and leases and fast-tracking drilling permits. Trump's plan to ramp up U.S. oil production is all about flooding the global market, with a goal of driving prices down and making it harder for Russia to rely on its oil profits. In theory, a rise in oil output from the U.S. would make oil cheaper and affect major exporters like Russia. However, while this strategy might sound nice on paper, energy experts have cast doubts on the practicality of Trump's approach. And for good reasons. Global oil prices are largely shaped by complex supply and demand dynamics that one country alone cannot control. While the U.S. definitely plays a significant role in the oil market, it is still only one player among many. The concern is that if the U.S. decides to boost oil production, some other major players in the oil market might decide to readjust and reduce their outputs. If the demand remains the same, the U.S. will not be able to keep up, and ultimately, the prices will once again skyrocket. But what if it all goes right? What if none of the experts' predictions comes true? Here's a full view on the shocking effects Trump's plan will have on Russia's economy. Russia is at war, and due to sanctions, the only way the country has managed to fund its military is through the revenue from oil exports. As a result, any drop in oil prices will hit the Russian economy hard, limiting its government's ability to fund essential programs, military spending, and international ventures. With reduced income, Russia will likely face budget cuts and economic constraints that will affect both the government and its people. Russia might face pressure to increase borrowing. However, with the sanctions placed by the West, the country's borrowing options may be limited, and without funds, the country's fiscal health will weaken as well as its standing in the global market. Trump's plan to boost the market with U.S. oil is not just about lowering global prices. It also aims to shift the balance of the European energy market. For many years, Europe has been heavily dependent on Russia for its energy supply. Reports state that in 2021 alone, Russia supplied 24% of the EU's petroleum oil and 48% of their pipeline gas. While these numbers have gradually reduced since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine, the EU still gets a significant portion of its oil from Russia. So by producing oil at a lower cost, the US could potentially offer Europe a cheaper and more secure alternative to Russian energy. This would reduce Russia's influence over Europe and weaken its hold on the energy market in the region. This way, European countries, particularly those affected by tensions with Russia, would welcome an alternative source of energy. But there's one major problem: Russia's previous experience with managing oil price fluctuations. Experts have noted how Russia has in the past quickly adapted to similar situations by working closely with OPEC to control production and stabilize prices. If the U.S. increases production, Russia could simply coordinate with OPEC members to reduce output, which would counterbalance the U.S. strategy and help Russia maintain stable prices. Russia's partnership with OPEC members, including Saudi Arabia, has often proven effective in countering price drops, allowing both Russia and OPEC nations to maintain favorable economic conditions. Keep in mind that Saudi Arabia's Aramco are the largest players in the oil and gas market, with 17% of the world's proven petroleum reserves. And to top that off, Aramco is an active member of OPEC, and OPEC controls nearly 50% of the world's natural gas. So with OPEC behind Russia, there's a possibility that Moscow could survive Trump's plan or even counteract it. But even if Russia is able to pull through the effects of Trump's plan, its currency would likely have taken a massive dip that would be hard to recover from. Right now, the Russian ruble is at one of the lowest points it's ever been in a very long time. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, the Russian ruble is losing value at a rapid rate, falling 40% against the US dollar since December 2022. Add that to the rising inflation the country faces. The central bank predicts inflation in Russia to rise to 8% or 8.5% before the end of 2024. As of October, Russia's central bank raised the benchmark interest to an outrageous 21%, the highest level it's been in over 2 decades.
These tank troops died during Putin's failed march on Kyiv at the start of the war. In September 2022, Putin's mass mobilization led to conscripts appearing in the data for the first time.
With oil exports being Russia's main source of revenue, any reduction would ultimately lower the demand for the ruble, causing it to depreciate against other major currencies like the US dollar and the euro. These are not just speculations. The ruble has a history of weakening during oil price crashes. For instance, in 2014, the ruble fell deeply when oil prices plummeted. In short, a weak ruble increases inflation in Russia. And as the cost of imports rises, both consumers and businesses that rely on foreign goods will be affected. And while the Russian central bank might try to stabilize the ruble through interest rate adjustments or currency market interventions, these measures have their own limitations. But beyond economic consequences, Trump's plans could also weaken Russia's geopolitical leverage. Russia's power on the world stage is largely derived from its energy wealth, which it uses to leverage influence in foreign policy. With a reduced revenue from oil, Russia would find it challenging to finance its military and provide economic aid to allies. This would limit its capacity to project power internationally. A reduced revenue stream might also impact Russia's domestic stability, as the government could struggle to meet public expectations. Social programs, infrastructure projects, and public sector wages are all funded by oil revenue, and cuts in these areas could lead to resentment among citizens. And Russia is already facing enough public outrage due to the war in Ukraine. There have been multiple protests and citizens fleeing the country to avoid conscription.
After mass mobilization in 2022, many potential conscripts protested or fled the country.
While Trump's plan may create short-term economic pressure on Russia, the long-term effectiveness of this strategy is being questioned. The oil market is highly dynamic, with demand patterns and production levels constantly changing. And with the world transitioning towards renewable energy, the demand for fossil fuels may gradually decline, reducing the significance of traditional oil powerhouses like Russia. If global demand for oil decreases, the US might find it hard to maintain high levels of production profitably. An oversupply could lead to prices falling too low, hurting the US oil industry itself. Smaller producers might struggle to stay afloat, and volatility in the market could deter future investments. Coupled with the environmental implications, as increased drilling may draw criticism from climate advocates, affecting the US reputation in environmental diplomacy. In the long term, the US will need to weigh the benefits of this approach against its potential consequences. The environmental impact, risk of oversupply, and an evolving market for renewable energy all pose significant challenges to sustaining high levels of fossil fuel production. Although Trump's strategy may not last in the long term, the president-elect may have already found an alternative solution. So check out this deep dive where I'll show you why Trump won't ease sanctions on Russia.